decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. Mail-in ballots in Wisconsin will only be counted if they are received by Election Day, November 3rd. Now, this could be a preview of what's to come in Pennsylvania, now that Republicans are asking the Supreme Court once again to reconsider whether the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania should count ballots received up to 3 days after Election Day. Joining us now, Secretary of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Kathy Boockvar. Madam Secretary, first, let me get your reaction to the U.S. Supreme Court ruling about Wisconsin.
Well, thanks for having me on, Jake. Appreciate it. Well, look, I can't really speak for Wisconsin. What I would say is, look, we very much hope that the Supreme Court continues to do what it did in Pennsylvania the last round, which was to allow the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision to stand. And I can tell you they're very different decisions. Wisconsin involved a federal law, a federal court, Pennsylvania, state constitution, state court. Pennsylvania has never had a stay in place, whereas Wisconsin did. So very different circumstances, but I'll tell you, regardless, I just want every voter to get their ballot in today. Ignore the noise, ignore the courts, get your ballot in today.
Justice Kavanaugh wrote in his opinion that states that require mail-in ballots to be returned on Election Day, quote, want to avoid the chaos and suspicions of impropriety that can ensue if thousands of absentee ballots flow in after Election Day and potentially flip the results of an election. What was your view of that? I think that was in a footnote by Brett Kavanaugh, Justice Kavanaugh.
Look, I mean, every state does this differently, right? I think there's 19 states that allow ballots to be received after Election Day, and then that allow them to be received after Election Day. Of course, every state requires them to be cast no later than Election Day. So that's the critical point here. Nobody's voting after Election Day. This is just dealing with COVID-19 caused mail delays. So I think the right decision was made by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. This is a decision that makes sense for today. We were not asking for permanent resolution, just that this year for the mail delays, that ballots are going to take a little longer to be received.
And just correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled was that if ballots are postmarked by November 3rd or before and arrive in the 3 days after, or if they have no postmark at all, which sometimes happens as well, that they should count if they're received in the 3 days after. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So they need to be cast by November 3rd, and the presumption is of course you don't want a voter to be disenfranchised for something that's no fault of their own. So every once in a while the post office fails to have a postmark on there, or if something is smudged, you don't want the voter to be penalized for that. So the voter needs to cast their ballot by November 3rd, received by 5 p.m. on November 6th, and that's under the circumstances. That was how we found the balance to make sure we were both acknowledging that there were mail delays, but also allowing that effective administration of elections to make sure that we would get those results as soon as possible.
So, Madam Secretary, just for people who are watching who are from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you would rather that they go and take their ballots to a drop box as opposed to a mailbox. Is that right?
I would rather them deliver it in person, whether that's to a county election office, an authorized drop-off location, or a drop box, which are all secure in Pennsylvania. They follow strict chain of custody procedures. Absolutely. At this point, we're a week out, right? We've all heard stories of ballots being delayed in the mail. I don't want anybody to lose their opportunity to vote. So I want every voter who has the ability to drop it off in person, and now we have more options than ever before on how to do that. People can go to votespa.com, look at all the drop-off locations, find one near you, and do it that way.
Votepa.com. Republicans in Pennsylvania think that they're going to have a better chance at getting the U.S. Supreme Court to rule in their favor now that Justice Amy Coney Barrett has been sworn in. For those who are not familiar, what happened last time is the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled what we just said, and then it was appealed and went to the U.S. Supreme Court. There was a 4-4 split, and because there was a tie, because there was still that empty seat, it just reverted back to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision. But if the U.S. Supreme Court agrees to hear it again with 9 justices and Justice Barrett on the court, they could very well rule against you.
There's all kinds of scenarios, and I'm sure you saw, Chief Justice Roberts, in his opinion, specifically talked about why the Wisconsin case was different than the Pennsylvania case. I think that those are reasons why also the 4-4 split happened. That might not have happened. That didn't happen in the case that came out in Wisconsin, right? That was a 5-3 decision. So I think they're not apples to apples. I'm going to keep my hopes up that the Supreme Court will continue to allow the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's interpretation of our Pennsylvania state constitution to apply. It's the right thing to do here. But in the meantime, I want every voter to ignore the noise and just get their ballots in today.